Hello friends, welcome to Gyna and Ops lecture. In today's video lecture, we are going to talk about the endometrial cycle. So first we will discuss or revise the menstrual cycle. Menstrual cycle. So menstrual cycle normally is of 28 days, and during this menstrual cycle there are changes in two organ. Ovary one is ovary, and that is called as ovarian cycle, and another one is endometrium, that is called as endometrial cycle, and menstrual cycle is also called as ovarian endometrial cycle. Ovarian endometrial cycle. During ovarian cycle, the first 14 day is related with the growth of the follicle, so it is called as follicular phase. And 14th day the ova is released, so day of ovulation, day of ovulation on 14th day, and the remaining follicle is converted into corpus luteum or yellow body, which is called as corpus luteum. So after ovulation, the phase is called as luteal phase. Luteal phase. During this follicular phase, the growing follicle releases hormone estradiol, and this estradiol will go into circulation and reach to the endometrium, and there will be growth of the endometrium or proliferation of the endometrium. So here there will be proliferative phase. Proliferative phase. After ovulation, the corpus luteum releases true hormone, that is estrogen and more progesterone. So this progesterone will cause secretory changes in the endometrium. So this phase is called as secretory phase. Secretory phase. So in today's lecture, we are going to talk about in detail about the endometrial cycle and the phases or changes of the endometrial cycle. So before discussing the endometrial cycle changes, first we'll see the structure of endometrium. So there are three layers of uterus. One is parametrium, that is nothing but peritoneal covering. The middle one is called as myometrium, that is muscular coat or muscular layer. And the innermost layer, which is called as endometrium. So if I will enlarge this endometrium, so you can see here the components of endometrium. So the deeper part of the endometrium is called as basal zone. This basal zone is responsible for the regeneration of endometrium. Means this is the part of the endometrium from where the endometrium regrows after the shedding. And this upper part, or you can say the superficial part, that is the functional zone, the shedding of which occurs during each menstrual cycle. So here you can see the structural component. So the superficial covering is superficial epithelium or surface epithelium. This long structure are these endometrial glands. And these are the branches of spiral arteries. So these are the vessels or blood vessels. And this dotted structure is nothing but stromal cells. Stroma is the stroma is the connective stroma is having the connective role actually, and the cells which are embedded in the this matrix of the stroma, that is the stromal cells. So the role of a stroma is connective. So this is the components of endometrium. Now let's see the changes in the endometrium during endometrial cycle. So during first 4 or 5 days, you can see there is menstrual phase, as there is shedding of endometrium, shedding of endometrium. So after shedding, the basal zone from where the endometrium has to regrow is roughly around 1 mm. So estradiol, which is released from the growing follicle from the ovary, this estradiol will cause the growth of endometrium from this basal zone. So how it will cause? It will cause the growth by causing cell division, as the estrogen is having mitogenic activity. That means it is able to cause the cell division. So it is having a mitogenic activity. That's why the cell divides more and more. So this division occurs in each component of the endometrium, like in the superficial cells, in the glandular part, in the stromal cells, and so because of this cell division in the superficial epithelium or surface epithelium, as well as in the gland and the stromal cells, so all the components uh, will start growing. And from this 1 mm, you can see that on 14th day, it will reach up to 4 mm. 4 mm. Also, there is development of blood vessels from the stump of this. So how? Because of the release of VEGF, that is vascular endothelial growth factor, which is responsible for the development of blood vessels. So this phase is called as proliferative phase, which is roughly around 4th to or 5th to 14th day. It may vary in individual to individual, we can say. After ovulation, the corpus luteum of the ovary releases progesterone and estrogen also. What progesterone will do? The first function is it opposes the mitogenic activity. It causes, or we can say it opposes the mitogenic activity of the estradiol. It opposes the mitogenic activity of the estradiol. So what will happen? There is no cell division. So there is no cell division as the progesterone is opposing this mitogenic activity. So what will happen? That no cell division, no growth, we can say, no increase in the cell number. But this this mitogenic this mitosis is continue for few days uh, in superficial part. So superficial stromal cells is still continue dividing, as in this component of this endometrium there is no mitogenic activity of the progesterone, we can say. There is no opposition to the mitogenic activity of the estrogen in this component. So this part will be compacted because of the stromal cell division still continue. But in the other components, there is no cell division. So no cell division in the other component. But here you can see superficial stromal cells will continue to divide and become compact. And in this part, like middle part and the gland and all, there is no cell division. The second function is, as you can see here, secretion in the glands. So here you can see how the secretion occur in the glands. So it is in the form of secretory granules, as the Golgi apparatus and all will mm, releases the secretion in the form of certain secretory granules, and these secretory granules will come to the surface, and through exocytosis the secretions come into the lumen of the gland, lumen of the gland. And this secretory granules is the structure through which the endometrial biopsy, yeah, on endometrial biopsy we can base, or in the proliferative phase. So this is a structure that is secretory granules, or you can say the vacuoles, through which we can say that whether the endometrium is in secretory phase or proliferative phase. So this is the next function of the progesterone, that is secretion in the endometrial gland. The third function is, as it has a smooth muscle relaxant activity, so it causes dilatation of blood vessel. So because of smooth muscle, you can say the more blood supply. So all these changes are at its peak around 22nd day, because 22nd is the peak day of progesterone, and all these changes which are occurring due to progesterone, that will be at peak on 22nd day. Later on, the progesterone, because the corpus luteum start means corpus luteum starts degenerating, and there will be decrease in the hormone level. So estrogen as well as the progesterone both will come down. So ultimately this uh, blood supply is reduced, as there's no more dilatation of the blood vessel. So blood supply ends and the stroma. So there will be no uh, there will be no we can say the proper blood supply. There is no hormonal support. So ultimately, if there is no hormonal support, so again there will be shedding of this endometrium because of the no hormonal support. So this will be the start of, we can say, new endometrial cycle, new menstrual phase of new menstrual phase of endo next endometrial cycle, we can say. And at the end of secretory phase, thickness of endometrium is roughly around 11 14 mm. So this was all about the endometrial cycle.